Hi, it's Claire from ABC Paralegal, and today we are discussing the fifth and final video in the series for litigants in person, and that's going to be what happens in your first hearing at court. So for many parents, the first family court hearing is one of the most stressful out of the process because there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of expectation, and quite often people believe that formative decisions will be made straight away. But what surprises most people is the first hearing is not about deciding your case. And in this video, I'm going to explain exactly what happens at first hearing dispute resolution appointments, often called a FHDRA, and how you should approach it as a litigant in person. So, what is a FHDRA? A FHDRA usually is the first court hearing after an application has been made in a child arrangement case. But it's important to understand it is not the final hearing. And the purpose of this hearing is to identify the issues in dispute, consider any safeguarding concerns, I can't speak today, explore whether agreements can be reached, and decide what steps you need to take next. And in many cases, the hearing will generally last less than an hour, and no formal final decision is going to be made. So before you've even entered the courtroom, there are several things that would likely have already happened. So that will be you've received your application, your sealed order for the first hearing, carried out basic safeguarding checks, asked CAFCASS to prepare a safeguarding letter. And this letter is quite important because it involves preliminary police checks, any social services involvement, and any initial concerns raised by either party. On the day of the hearing, you may be asked to speak to a CAFCASS officer, I can't say that word. They're also referred to as a family court advisor before going into court. And the conversation generally will feel informal, but it's quite important because they will ask you what arrangements you seek, what arrangements are currently in place, whether you've got any concerns, and also if there's any misreporting, this is your opportunity to correct it. I mean, essentially, what you say in this conversation can alter the way that hearing will proceed. When you go into the courtroom, the hearing is usually structured and focused. So the judge will typically introduce the case, confirm who's present, and identify key issues. And this also is for the purpose of the court recording the hearing. You may hear the judge say, what are the issues in this case? And that question is central to the hearing. So the judge's role at this stage is not to decide anything, but essentially to manage the case, identify issues that need to be resolved, and deciding what evidence is required. The role of CAFCASS within the hearing is they may speak to the court and essentially summarise safeguarding concerns, provide initial recommendations, or suggest next step. So an example of that may suggest that further investigation is required, which is where we bring in the Section 7 potentially, or that certain arrangements should or could be considered. So one of the key purposes of a FHDRA is to explore whether agreements can be reached. And in some cases, the judge may encourage both parties to discuss matters outside the courtroom. Because although generally it's unlikely, some cases can actually be resolved at this stage, particularly where both parties are open to agreement. If an agreement can't be reached, the case will move forward. This is where a judge will give directions. So, what are directions? Well, directions are basically instructions from the court about what needs to happen next. So they may include filing witness statements, obtaining a CAFCASS report, providing further evidence, listing the case for another hearing, and even at this stage requesting further experts be brought in. So, for example, the court may say both parties are to file statements by a specific date, and this helps structure the case moving forward. So we could end up having a fact-finding hearing. In some cases, there may be serious allegations raised that need to be resolved, and if those allegations are disputed, the court may list a fact-finding hearing, often referred to as an FOF, and this is a separate hearing where the court will determine what's actually happened. Fact-finding hearing doesn't always happen in every case, but it can become an important part of the process where it's required. So what happens in between hearings? So in some situations, the court can make interim arrangements, and they are temporary arrangements put in place until a final decision can be made. So for example, contact arrangements, temporary living arrangements. So as a litigant in person, your focus at the federal should be being clear and concise about what you're asking for, focusing on the child's welfare, and understanding that this is an early stage of the process. So again, a common mistake is people try to argue the entire case at this stage, and that's not the purpose of the hearing. The key takeaway from this is a FHDRA is not about finishing your case, it's about setting the direction of your case, and understanding that can change how you approach the hearing and effectively how you present your case. So if you're preparing for a first directions hearing and unsure what to expect or how to approach it, getting some guidance can make the process much clearer. So if you need support, you're welcome to get in touch. So in the next video, we're going to discuss what happens at later hearings and how to prepare for them.